Which seems, vampires seem a little weak to me because if you're going to be a cannibal, just go all the way.
Right.
What are we doing playing around here?
Yeah.
It's fourth quarter, baby. Take it home. Touchdown. Eat the whole body.
Wow. One thing that I'm interested in.
Welcome back to Stuff That We Like / Enjoy, at least at this point in time. I'm Caleb.
And I'm Christina.
And we're the Castanettas. And today I'm going to ask Christina, what's something you like / enjoy?
Something I like / enjoy is a topic that I've been, kind of interested in for a while. And last week we were talking about the concept of eternity and living forever. And we obviously know that from the view of Christianity, but it made me wonder what other religions teach about the afterlife. And so I pulled up the world's major religions, which are Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, Judaism, and Christianity. And so I kind of did like a very broad overlook into what these 5 major religions believe. And so I'm just kind of share a little bit about each of the religions' views on the afterlife and eternity, and then we can kind of discuss our thoughts on them.
I love it.
Thanks. And I do not claim to be an expert on any of these religions, even Christianity. And I know that within different religions, there can be different views. So it's just a very broad overview.
All good?
Yeah. So I'm going to kind of lump Hinduism and Buddhism together. They're very similar. Both Hinduism and Buddhism do not divide people into like believers or unbelievers per se. Both religions view one's soul as eternal and that you get reincarnated every time you die. And you come back in different forms based on karma. So if you had a lot of good karma or you were a good person in your life, it leads to better rebirths each time you die.
Okay.
But if you were a bad person, you might come back as a goat or a rat, or even in like Buddhism, like you come back as like a hell being or a hungry ghost, like some pretty rough situations. But there's always hope to kind of work your way up through many lifetimes to what is considered in Hinduism moksha, which is when you enter into union with Brahman, or in Buddhism, it is when you attain nirvana. So both of those religions believe that you'll reach this kind of state of eternal bliss and like oneness with the universe, but you're not like a conscious being in a single place. Mm-hmm. You just become it, kind of a thing. So there's not necessarily a heaven or hell, but just kind of these chances to reach bliss and peace, kind of in the idea of meditation where you think about nothing. It's like you achieve something that way. Mm-hmm. And then with Islam, it's very interesting because there's a lot of similarities to Christianity. So in Islam, to be a believer means that you accept that Allah is God and that the Prophet Muhammad was the messenger of Allah, and you follow the Quran. So if you're a believer in that and you die, you go to a realm called Barzkha, which is kind of like this holding place before eternity. So if you're a believer, Barzkha is like an enjoyable place. It's nice. There's peace and comfort. But if you're an unbeliever, you're kind of on the bad side of Barzkha, and where it's like described as being a constricted, tight place in an area of torment. Oof. So not good, but it's not the final day. So everyone who died is in Barzkha, waiting this final day of judgment, when everyone's going to be resurrected and they're going to be judged based on their deeds. And then everybody crosses over a thin bridge. And the righteous are able to make it across this thin bridge and enter into heaven where they're close to Allah for all eternity. But the wicked fall off the bridge into hell, which is just described as fire, boiling water, and chains for all of eternity.
Wow, very biblical.
Mm-hmm. And then Judaism, this was wild how much work this was to research, because Judaism really doesn't have a lot of beliefs, at least fixed ones, on eternity or the afterlife. It's a religion that's really focused on living a good and ethical life now, and then kind of like things will work itself out later on. So Judaism as a whole believes that when you die, your soul goes to what would be considered heaven, where you're close to God and you are reviewed. Your life is reviewed before God or by a divine tribunal of angels. And if you were good enough, you stay here in heaven. And if you weren't a super good person, you go to Gehenna for a temporary, up to 12 months season of punishment and repenting for your sins, a little bit like purgatory in the Catholic tradition. And once you've, kind of worked through your problems, then you can go to heaven forever. But there's not really this view of like maybe being with God, but you're just in heaven. And then there's not really a true concept of hell. There's some traditions where maybe the wicked will be in hell and they end up not existing after a period of time. That's a strong belief that they kind of get annihilated. So that anybody who doesn't believe in God goes to hell and then they kind of get punished for a while and then stop existing. And only super, super bad people live in hell forever. From what I watched probably 15, 20 videos on the topic and so many different rabbis. And pretty much the summary was like, but, it doesn't really matter. Let's focus on this life.
I feel like it really does matter.
I guess.
That's my initial feeling.
Well, it's interesting because in Judaism, they follow primarily what us as Christians would call the Old Testament. They would call it Tanakh. And there's really not a description of hell or the afterlife in the Tanakh. So it's just not a core part of their religion. It's mainly to serve God now in this life.
I like that, but how it doesn't, if you do that, then you don't differentiate your religion from basic principles of living or separate philosophies. Like Stoicism.
Yes.
It's the same thing. It's focused on now. It doesn't matter what's going to happen in the afterlife. It's focused on now.
Exactly.
So it stops becoming about eternity and starts becoming just about 80 years on earth, which can be a good thing and a really bad thing.
Right. Yeah, it's quite interesting as well because along with that, in Judaism, they believe you need to follow God, Yahweh, but there's kind of this idea that like if a person dies, they can then kind of in this in-between state come to know Yahweh and end up in heaven. So there's not really, it's kind of can get into like many religions can lead to Yahweh. And that there's another chance after death in some different views. And so there's not this like follow Judaism or you go to hell. Like they don't evangelize in Judaism. There's not really a strong push of converting people. It's very interesting.
So you have to believe what they believe, but you don't have to believe it very strongly.
Yes, or at least you have to believe in Yahweh, God, but you might not need to be a Jew or follow Jewish practices to get there.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's just a belief in God, that there is a God.
But the right God, but you might get to that while you are in Gehenna in this purification state. Or, nobody really goes to hell forever. You either cease to exist or you kind of, one thing that came up a lot was that Judaism stresses God's mercy, not endless punishment.
Which is really interesting because they focus mainly on the Old Testament, which is a wrath, like has a majority of God's wrath contained within the scriptures.
Yeah.
So I would, if I was following their religion, it would be difficult for me to focus on a God of mercy, given that most of the Bible that I read, if I were them, would be showing a God of wrath and justice, you know?
Yeah.
So it'd be a tough thing to believe that, right?
It's tricky, for sure. And like I'm describing what is a general view of Judaism. So I'm sure that Orthodox Jews or more secular or those who are just based on the Tanakh or the Torah might have different views on that. And so it was just so hard. I couldn't find anywhere it's like, this is what we believe. It was pretty much like, be a good person here on earth.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Interesting. So then the final one is Christianity, which there's different, obviously, views based on if you're Catholic or Orthodox or Protestant. But in general, a believer in Christianity is someone who accepts Jesus Christ as their Savior, as God, and they repent for their sins. And when you die, your soul immediately goes to heaven to dwell with God. Whereas unbelievers who don't believe in God and do not believe that Jesus is their Savior, when they die, their soul either enters a temporary place of separation from God, like the grave, maybe not hell right away. It's very debated, but that there will be a coming final judgment day, just as is taught in Islam, where all the dead are raised from the grave and they're judged based on their works and if they believed in Jesus during their lifetime. And those who are righteous will get resurrected bodies and live with God forever on earth, a new earth. And the wicked will go to hell, also known as the lake of fire, where they'll be separated from God and punished forever, or based on your denomination, you might kind of cease to exist, be annihilated. Very similar to Judaism, where nobody's really in hell forever.
Yeah.
And then Catholicism adds purgatory as this kind of in-between state, where believers who die, but they're not in a state of grace, meaning they haven't like repented for all their sins, they'll be in this in-between place, kind of like in Judaism, where you go to Gehenna, or in Islam, where you're kind of being purified, and then you finally get to go to heaven. And so those are the kind of the 5 broad overviews of the major religions.
That was, great job, first off. It's interesting to find that so many of them have an in-between place.
I was surprised
so
by
that
that
people
too.
can continue to be redeemed or condemned. It seems like my human heart wants that to be true, but at the same time, when is the cutoff? When does the Lord actually judge you to be faithful or not faithful?
You're talking about in the view of Christianity, of
I'm
like
talking
purgatory?
I'm talking about in their view, and in our in our view, it's pretty. In Christianity, it's pretty cut and dry. As soon as you're dead, you're dead. Like that was it. You had your choice on earth whether to pick Jesus or not, and you
Yes.
didn't do it, or you did do it. But for them, it seems like there's a continuation of their faith being worked out, but it's up to just the person and the amount of growth they're going through.
Yes.
And when it relates to how long they're going to be there or how long they stay there. And so it's very ambiguous.
Yes.
It's very comfortable to think that way, as opposed to saying, when you die, that's your decision has been made.
Exactly.
So I don't know. Part of my human heart, like I said before, wants to believe that because that seems like grace and kindness and love.
Right. That people get another chance.
Yes. The Bible seems to not necessarily agree with that.
Yes. Yeah.
So I could see how humans would want to create, another chance
Exactly.
in case they mess up.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's fascinating as I was going through these, other than, so like in Islam, it's pretty much like you die and you're in this waiting place, but there's not hope for like, if you were a baddie, a non-believer in Islam, that you get a second chance.
Yeah.
But in Hinduism, Buddhism, Judaism, and like Catholicism, you all get this second chance. And then with Hinduism, Buddhism, you could have hundreds and thousands of lifetimes. And so there isn't really this, I think, pressure in this life as, a human living your 80 or so years to follow your religion very well, per se.
Yeah.
Like Hinduism, Buddhism, it's about being a better person, but it's like, well, if I'm not, I'll come back maybe as like, a goat, but then I'll be a good goat and come back. And then, it doesn't matter really, because there's always these other chances, lifetime after lifetime, of becoming better and better. And then finally you get bliss. And with Hinduism, Buddhism, they don't have like one God that you're serving. Many gods are kind of this Brahman, karma, nirvana idea. But it's not like you get to go to heaven. Like the highest level is kind of that you stop existing.
Yeah.
And that's your reward.
It's so weird.
Yeah. Whereas in Christianity and even like Islam, your reward is that you get to be with God.
Yeah.
And we would agree that Islam is a false God. But they, at least in their religion, it's, it's very similar to Christianity. Except for that in Christianity, you're not supposed to hate people of other religions, whereas like in Islam, it seems to be a bit more encouraged.
Yes. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
I like you pointed out Barska, I think you called it.
Yes.
Which is the either restricted type place for unbelievers, or it's a good place for believers in Islam. I feel like this is very similar to the Book of Enoch's version of Abraham's bosom, which was the mountain with two separate places in it.
Yes.
That if you believed in God and practiced, sacrifices and tried to live his commandments out, then you were sent to a very comfortable place.
Yes.
And that was a waiting place. Whereas if you didn't, then you're sent to a very uncomfortable place, but you're still waiting. So I think there's a biblical principle that's been picked up in each of these, which is the waiting place that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Similar to what Abraham's bosom was described as.
Yeah, the parable of Jesus. Yeah.
Yes. And what may still be a reality, which is when we die, we go into like kind of a slumber somewhere,
right,
until judgment happens. Some believe.
Yes, especially that view is very popular with like Seventh-day Adventists, that you kind of go into this like soul sleep space. It might be Jehovah's Witnesses. I mix those up, where it's kind of like when you die, whether you are a believer in God or not, you all kind of go into this like hibernation state until the final day. Whereas Judaism, they believed that they went to a real place. And it was it was called the grave or Sheol. And there was a kind of a good side, like you mentioned, for believers in God, and a bad side. But it wasn't necessarily hell and torment or like eternal bliss with God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hate the description they gave of Barska for the bad people, which was
tight,
a restricted tight place for unbelievers in Islam. That sounds awful. That sounds terrible.
It sounds worse than the hell part where there's, fire and chains. It's like you're in like a coffin or something.
Yeah, that was our good friend Nate, who's been on the podcast before. His description of hell, which was harrowing when he told me years ago, was that it was a place where it was about a foot wide and hot, and went on for eternity in all directions. And so you'd lay on your belly and like be uncomfortable and crawl.
Wow.
And I was like, I didn't need that mental image, but this sounds so similar.
Exactly.
Like uncomfortability, even in the waiting for judgment.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very interesting that other than Judaism, where like they do believe that, if you're an unrighteous person, that you do go to, hell, that nobody really is there forever, kind of an idea. But the other, Islam and Christianity have more the view that when you die, you have, there's one of two places, heaven or hell, that you end up in. And it's hard, like, I think for Christians sometimes, when they're sharing their faith, to be like, yeah, the Bible does say that if you do not believe in God and choose that he is the only God, Jesus is his son, Jesus is God, and that you believe in him, that you will be likely in hell forever, although you can have the interpretation that you'll eventually, be annihilated. And that seems extremely harsh, but I think that we don't maybe fully understand like how bad sin and wickedness really is, and how bad it is.
That's the biggest blind spot in human beings, is saying, it's the injustice that we see in the people that actually get to go to heaven because of Jesus' sacrifice. Like the man on the cross, the criminal on the cross next to Jesus, he got into heaven because he believed in Jesus, and God's grace covered all of his sins.
Yes.
Whereas we see that and we're like, he did terrible things his whole life.
To the point he was being crucified because he, was a bad person.
And that's the hard thing, is that people don't see their sins as equal to the murderer or the rapist or whatever it is. You may never have murdered, but you lied or you cheated.
Right. And that
maybe you did
mean
murder.
The sins are the same in their consequences.
But all sin keeps you from a perfect God.
Exactly.
You can't be in his presence or it will kill you.
Yeah.
That's been the biggest like you've said, issue with people I've talked to about Christianity, is that they're like, you're just telling me a a murderer can just get into heaven. And I'm like, well, it's just, yes, but sin is sin to God. You know, he is white, he is clean. Just because you don't see yourself as sinful.
Right.
That's the thing keeping you from realizing that you actually need Jesus' sacrifice.
Yeah.
It's just tough for all of us to, even today, like we see people going through scandals in church. And we talked about it the other day, but we're like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe that guy did that, that lady did that. But in reality, we're like 3 days from doing 3 Jesusless days from probably doing that same thing.
Yeah.
And also just as sinful, just as in need as of God's forgiveness as they are and God's grace as they are. And yet we're kind of doing the same thing that non-Christians do when they're struggling with this concept, which is, I can't believe God would save them. They did such terrible things in the church.
Exactly.
But, you know, it sneaks in. It really does start to sneak in. But I can understand that being hard for people to grasp.
Totally. And as you're saying that, I think it's interesting because people do think that the God of Christianity, you know, Jesus, the one true God, is a harsh God because he will send people to hell. And that they don't get, like you said, why can God forgive a murderer, you know?
Yeah.
But all the other major religions, Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, Judaism, you all can be a murderer too and go to heaven.
Yeah.
And be, you know, forgiven by who you view your God is. Hinduism, Buddhism, you know, a couple more lifetimes, you know, coming back as a good person. And so it's kind of interesting that Christianity and specifically is judged for like God letting bad people repent of their sins and be in eternity with him. But all the other major religions allow for that too.
Yeah, exactly.
And Islam is pretty rough on the hell part.
Yes.
And Judaism's kind of like, yeah, you'll go to hell too.
But Judaism is just it's a special kind of weird.
So confused.
Yeah.
And I probably didn't even, I literally, not joking, I was like, okay, I got it figured out. And I'd watch another video and they're like, this is how it is. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Even Grok, you know, ChatGPT couldn't help me that much.
Yeah.
They were like, yeah, pretty much nobody knows.
Well, the philosophy part of me loves that they focus on this life and how to be a good person and how to love well in this life. Because that's what we're all called to do. We're supposed to look like Christ and love well. So the practical side of me loves that, and the side that loves philosophy. The other side that's so focused on eternity, it asks the question, what's keeping you going after a couple of years of doing these good works, of continuing to follow the commands? The real hope in Christ is that we get to spend eternity with him.
Yes.
That is the goal. And
regardless of our imperfections.
Yeah. So if you're not believing that, what's driving you?
Yeah.
Is it just religion? It would have to just be religion, sticking to the rules.
Yeah.
And I don't know what else would drive me. Like I would immediately just be like, hey, I'm gonna focus on these rules as little as I can to get by, and then I'm just gonna enjoy my life. You know?
Yeah. Right. And like with Buddhism and Hinduism, the goal is to be a better person, to be good karma, good to animals, nice, you know, but there is no assurance that you will ever reach nirvana or Brahman. Yeah. Whereas in Christianity, there is an assurance that if you believe in your heart and confess with your mouth, Jesus is Lord, you will be saved and you will live eternity with him. Whereas, you know, not Islam, but Buddhism and Hinduism, there is no assurance that you will ever reach this highest place of eternal bliss. And even if you make it there, you just kind of stop existing.
Exactly.
And like that, like not existing is almost more terrifying than like being punished forever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like the eternal bliss part of the nirvana.
It's unconscious, you are just one with the good.
Yeah. See, that seems like a very human view of what heaven would be. You know, heaven is not very clearly, but described in the Bible to a point where you can picture parts of it. But to say that eternal bliss is the goal, it's such a human thing to say because we're all constantly working to have easier lives, to have more convenience, to have less struggle. I think that's a very mankind kind of idea, or
Yeah.
I guess to continue to use the word, a very human idea to be like, as soon as I don't have any more struggles, that's heaven.
Yes.
And it would take a God or an angel to come down and tell us something that's different than not having any more struggles
Yes.
as being the place that we're actually trying to reach.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that it's inherently flawed in that it's just what everybody longs for. You know, it's just such an easy pull from out of thin air. Just be like, I think heaven would be where we don't have to struggle anymore. And it's like, yes, that's part of it for sure.
Yes.
But it's not just hitting a certain point and then you just kind of you vibe with the whole universe.
Right. Unconsciously.
Yeah. It's too vague,
Yes.
you know?
Right. Which I think as well, there's this misconception, even in Christianity itself, that when we die as believers in Jesus, we're just going to go to like heaven, float on a cloud forever, play our harps, be like angel beings. Where in the Bible, it actually says that at the end of the age, you know, Jesus comes back, destroys all the wicked. We want wicked people not to live, you know, be against us forever.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I think people are, oh, we don't want war, we don't want judgment until somebody like comes and like kills one of your family members or does something horrendous. And then you actually do want
You want justice.
justice.
Yes.
And God is going to bring final justice. And we're not going to live up in the clouds in heaven forever. It says that God will make the whole earth new and perfect. So we're going to live on this actual earth with God forever.
Yeah.
And I think many people, it's like either go to hell or heaven. You're like, well, hell would suck, but heaven's just clouds. It's like actually the difference is separation from God, or you get to live on this earth that you love.
And rule and reign.
Yes, yeah.
You have a job.
Yeah.
Like God, we talked about this the other day, but God created Adam and then he said, like, take care of my creation in the garden. He gave him a job.
Yes.
Like he had a fulfilled life and work to do.
Yes.
God's going to give us both of those things in the
Right.
kingdom.
Yeah.
So it's, like you're saying, it's not like you float on clouds or you go to hell where it's interesting and they do stuff. It's
Right,
like,
exactly.
it's not that idea at all.
And maybe you just stop existing, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, whereas eternity with God, viewing it as a Christian, is I'm so excited for that. I'm like, I'm going to live on this earth and there'll not be traffic.
Yeah.
You know, we'll get to, you know, we won't get sick. We'll be with God. There'll be no more sin. It says in the Bible, there'll be no more tears or sorrow.
Yeah.
And I'll get to go hike the Grand Canyon if I didn't get to in this life. I mean, maybe God remakes the whole world and there is no more Grand Canyon, but I think he'll leave it for me. But in like Judaism, the teaching is if you do go to some kind of heaven, you're just kind of with the divine is what it speaks about. But it's not like you're living on earth per se. There are some views where that you will live on a perfect world forever. But in Islam, you just kind of go to this heaven ambiguous floating place.
Yeah.
Same thing with Buddhism or Hinduism. You just become one with the universe. Whereas I think there's so much more hope in Christianity of living on this earth that's going to be perfect and having a job to do. It's not just clouds forever.
Yeah. And there are people in Christianity that believe in the cloud version of heaven.
Yes.
And to them, I would say, like, hey, dig in, like, God's got more for you. Read the Bible.
Yeah.
And not in a disciplinary way, like, hey, you should know more about God and the Bible and get excited about heaven.
Yes.
It's like the closer you get to God's word and the closer you get to God himself, the more excited you are about eternity.
Exactly.
And I can speak to that because I was one of those people that was very uninterested in what heaven looked like. I was like, all right, we're just going to be fine. We're float. But then the more you start to get into God's word, the more you're like, oh my God, I can't wait for no more sickness and no more disease. I can't wait to rule and reign. And I can't wait to be with my best friend who I've managed a relationship with for 80 years on this earth. Well, for me, 31, almost 32. But I can't wait to be with this person that I know.
Yeah.
You know, so for those people who feel a bit hopeless about heaven, keep going. Keep reading the Bible. It gets better.
It does. Yeah. It's good. Yeah. So any last thoughts on anything that stuck out to you with like the 5 major religions, their view on the afterlife?
No, I really like the way that you broke it down.
Yeah.
And I like the similarities that kind of showed themselves between the religions.
Yeah. It's cool.
What about you?
Well, I just found, obviously, I love Jesus. I believe that Jesus is the only way to heaven. And it's like these other religions, like some of them are kind of close in the idea of like, we should be good, we should be kind to people, like everything that Christianity and Jesus preaches. But one thing I love about Christianity and Jesus is that we have an assurance of salvation, that we will know for sure that if we believe in Jesus in our heart and confess with our mouth, that we will go to heaven and then this, new earth that he will create. Whereas these other religions, they don't have like, you're for sure going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's so much less hope.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And people who believe in these religions, please write in if we misrepresented some part of your religion. We may not believe in it, but we don't want to be out here spreading misinformation about anything.
Yeah.
So people who believe in Judaism?
Yes.
Is that how you...
I think it can be pronounced
Judaism,
both ways. But I would
Judaism?
love to actually talk to a Jew in real life about how they would explain the afterlife.
Please write in.
Yeah.
If you have one out there listening.
Cool.
We love you.
All right. We're now going to move on to our next segment, which is Legendary Legends.
The Legend Lowdown.
The Legend Lowdown. Where Caleb will tell us what our legend of the week is.
Our legend of the week is Dracula.
Oh, fun. I don't know
Yeah.
much about Dracula.
Okay, well, let me tell you.
Okay.
So, the topic for today comes from the legend of Dracula, but it's based off of a real person.
Okay.
His name was Vlad the Impaler, to be specific.
Okay.
So let me take you on a little journey.
I want to drink your blood.
You know where it's going. So, Vlad the Impaler was a 15th century ruler of Wallachia. I don't know how to say
And
that.
this was a real life person?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
So that is modern day Romania, Wallachia, whose real life cruelty inspired one of the most famous legends in history,
Okay.
which would be Dracula. Vlad earned a reputation for impaling his enemies on stakes, which made him both feared and respected in his time.
Wow.
Over the centuries, his story grew into myth, eventually giving birth to the vampire legend we know today, Dracula. So it was actually Vlad III, known as Vlad Dracula, and he reigned in like the mid 1400s. He inherited the name Dracula from his father,
Okay.
Vlad II, who was a member of the Order of the Dragon, a chivalric order dedicated to defending Christianity.
Chivalry. So kind of the idea of chivalry.
Chivalric.
Okay.
I've
So
never
it was
heard that.
an order.
Dedicated to defending Christianity.
Okay.
Yeah. So Vlad III became known for defending his lands from invading forces, particularly the Ottoman Empire, and for using extreme punishment methods to maintain order and loyalty among his people.
Dang.
Well, go ahead.
I was going to say, that surprisingly really works. Like
Yes.
having like society is better when we have worse punishments for bad people.
I know.
It actually is a very helpful deterrent.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And your gets the death penalty, though.
I've got less that way in the last 6 to 8 months, but it'd be a great discussion for another day.
We'll talk about it at some point. Back to Vlad.
Back to Vlad.
While he was a skilled military leader, his brutal tactics, including the impalement we talked about, terrified his enemies and became the stuff of legend. So this is actually the question I had for you, which is interesting because you kind of answered it. Do you think his reputation for cruelty and like fear tactics was necessary for him to survive politically in the 1400s back in the day?
Man, I don't know enough about what was going on culturally and with different governments and societies back then. So I don't know if Vlad the Impaler was like, you stole a piece of bread, I'm going to impale you. Or if he was like, if you're a bad person, we're going to take you out.
We're going to impale you.
Or if like, we don't support Vlad, then I'll kill you. So it really depends on who he was impaling and why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you imagine just impaling being like a casual thing you saw every other week while you were alive.
I mean, well, it's like in Roman culture, even around, the time of Jesus, they crucified people. One of the worst ways to die.
All the time.
Just on the side of the roads, This is a very violent episode.
It is.
Yeah.
PG-13.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a great question, but I think it really, if you were impaled because you don't support Vlad, you're like, treason, we're going to kill you. Like,
yeah.
Probably not.
Well, what if I were to give you a little timeline of his life?
Please do.
And then you could answer.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So in 1431, Vlad was born. He was born in Transylvania to Vlad II.
Man.
Dracula of the house of Draculesti. So he was a member of the Order of Dragon, in other words.
Okay, dragon is Draculesi.
Yeah, so he was Dracula of the house of Draculesti.
Okay.
Which I assume is a position within the house of Draculesti, the order he was a part of.
Okay.
So that was his father.
Christian order.
Yes,
allegedly.
It defended Christianity, allegedly.
Right.
They probably did some terrible things in the name of the Lord.
Just like the Crusades.
Yes. Mm-hmm. The good old days.
It's like, follow Jesus or we'll impale you.
Woo.
It's a great witness.
Yeah. So he was born in 1431. From ages 11 to 17, he was taken hostage with his brother Radu, which they think, and they were taken hostage by the Ottoman Empire, who he defended his country from later in life. This, they theorized, helped shape his ruthlessness and like his strategic mind. Mm-hmm. So that happened from ages 11 to 17. Him and his brother were captured by their enemies. 6 years after he was taken hostage, so he's still technically hostage for one more year after this, Vlad the second, Dracula, was assassinated.
Okay.
So
was that his father?
That was his father. So after he gets released from the Ottoman Empire, he goes into exile. He's no longer welcome with his people because his father was assassinated. So this also helped him hone some survival and military skills. And then 9 years after this, he returns to Wallachia as a prince. So takes back the throne and consolidates power by eliminating his rivals and establishing those strict laws.
Okay.
So
he does kind of like a hostile takeover of the region and is just killing people.
yes.
Okay.
Impaling people.
Impaling
You know
them.
how he did.
At like 28, 29. Mm-hmm. That's crazy.
Vlad the Impaler, baby. So he had a 6-year first reign, or the first 6 years of his reign was called the brutal, you could call it like the brutal part of his ruling. This is where he enforced severe punishments. He earned the nickname the Impaler, and something really positive, he protects the poor while punishing the corrupt officials.
Great.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Robin Hood.
Yeah.
By just impaling people.
Exactly. And then 6 years after starting this first reign, he has more conflicts with the Ottomans who captured him. So he defends Wallachia using guerrilla tactics, not necessarily war out in an open field, and psychological warfare. So they claim that tens of thousands of enemy soldiers were reportedly killed and impaled by Vlad the Impaler.
Wow.
That's
the legend.
Not confirmed.
Very part got it.
Yes, there were a lot of people killed.
Right.
We don't know if they were all impaled.
Right. Especially by him. Yeah.
Yeah. So 14 years after he started ruling, he was overthrown briefly, but he returns multiple times to the throne and continues to battle rivals.
Dang.
And even marries strategically to secure some more alliances around him.
Multiple times then?
I think he just marries once.
Okay.
I didn't look into that
That's
clearly,
fine.
though.
Bride of Dracula.
Yeah. And then, just 45 years old, he dies under unclear circumstances.
Wow. Okay.
To be remembered only as a fearsome military leader who kind of protected the poor, but also had some really brutal ways of punishing people.
And kind of just wanted to be a ruler.
Yeah.
Okay. Avenge his father.
Mm-hmm. So, knowing all that, I pose to you the question now. Do you think his reputation for cruelty and fear tactics was necessary for him to survive politically?
Yes, for his to be the ruler of Wakucha or whatever it is.
Wallachia. Or Romania, I think today.
Obviously, the people weren't voting him in some sort of democratic way.
Yeah.
So he'd if he wanted to be the ruler, he had to kind of kill his enemies.
Yeah.
And also the Ottoman Empire is coming against him. So you would think the poor liked him, but obviously maybe not other people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't condone what he did. I mean, I think that's good to defend your country or if your people are being attacked, like the Ottomans. But it seemed like he was just taking out a lot of people just so he could be the ruler of Romania.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was more it.
Interesting. So how do we get to Dracula from that?
Great question. Bram Stoker, I had to look up his name, in the year 1897, wrote a Gothic horror novel. So Dracula was created from the historical figure in this graphic novel of Vlad the Impaler. So he drew a lot upon Vlad the Impaler in order to create Dracula.
It's kind of like some fan fiction of the Impaler.
Yes. So that's why I didn't make this a huge part of the episode, because we know it's just made up. You know?
Nobody actually believes that there
believes there is a Dracula. Yeah. But that leads me to my last question to you, which is, although we can most assuredly remove this vampire origin story from being an actual legend,
right?
Do you think there are vampires or something like vampires out in the world? And if so,
wow,
what do you think they are?
Okay. Man, I'd be fascinated how this person who wrote the Dracula book connected vampires to Vlad the Impaler. That's such a far, other than it's set in Transylvania, kind of idea.
Maybe we'll do a follow-up episode.
So do I think that there are real-life vampires per se?
Yeah.
I think that there are people of different religions that participate in ritualistic blood drinking, not good stuff. But I don't believe that there are beings, as in more of a human type being, who can't see the sun and sleeps in coffins and has fanged teeth like a bat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You would make a perfect vampire. I'm just looking at you right now. You have this timeless beauty about you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm so pale.
I'm so pale. I think you could pull off a vampire really well.
Okay, thank you.
You imagine me pale? No way.
You'd look very odd.
I would look terrible. I would look like an albino boxer dog.
Dog. That's so funny. I thank you for the compliment, I think.
Yeah.
I do know that, like, in New Orleans, I believe, there is, like, a group of vampire-ish people. Just like how there's furries, people that dress up like a dog or a cat and have, like, a wolf identity or persona. There are people who get their teeth filed like vampires and drink each other's blood.
Ooh.
Like small amounts. So I know there's people that are, and they are, you know, their religion is obviously kind of involved in that. So I know there's people that are emulating something, and I don't think that, I think there's either spiritual roots to kind of most of the legends or things that we have out there.
Yeah. Which seems, you know, vampires seem a little weak to me, because if you're going to be a cannibal, just go all the way.
Right.
What are we doing playing around here?
Yeah.
It's fourth quarter, baby. Take it home. Touchdown. Eat the whole body.
Wow. One thing that I'm interested in, having not known much about the Dracula book, is so the Vlad the Impaler, his dad was doing stuff, at least in the name of Christianity. But isn't a way to defeat a vampire that you have like a silver cross or a crucifix?
Yes.
Isn't there something in holy
it's
water?
It's supposed to drive them away.
Yeah. So how did this guy who wrote Dracula take Vlad the Impaler, who was supposed to be like this Christian, and be like, the way you defeat the vampire Christian is with like holy water and crucifixes?
That's a great question.
Some plot holes.
Yeah. Unless it would be really cool if he tied that in his own book and he's just like, your father was good, but you have become this monster. And so, it would be natural that the father's goodness would repel the evil in the son.
Yeah.
So I could see something like that happening, but I didn't look enough into the book to really understand what it was about.
Wow. What about you? Do you think there's like vampires or like something like that out there?
No, I don't. People are twisted. Like you said, some people drink blood. They're weird. But for the most part, I think it's just a really dark story. And there are some really awesome movie adaptations of Dracula that aren't necessarily horror. They're like fun movies, not necessarily fun, but comedies that have been made out of it, comedy shows. And so I like to see people play with this legend in kind of a more lighthearted version. So not everything is bad that has come out of this, but for the most part, I think it's just a really twisted version of history.
Yes, from a twisted person,
From a
Vlad the
very twisted
Impaler.
person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, pretty interesting.
Fascinating. That was a great way of presenting that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Next on this podcast, we like to recommend something to our lovely listeners. So, babe, what's something you recommend to our
I would recommend, I actually pulled the quote up.
Okay.
So I read this quote today by Matt Walsh. He's a conservative commentator. Don't agree with everything he has to say, but I thought this was interesting. He wrote, "The honeymoon phase is one of the most harmful marriage myths. Young couples go into marriage expecting immediate bliss. Even worse, they believe that however happy they are in the first few years of marriage is the happiest they will ever be. The truth is exactly the inverse. It's hardest at the beginning. Anything worth doing is always going to be more difficult when you start doing it. It gets better and better as you go. Stick with it. The real honeymoon comes later. You need to grow into it."
That's cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. I like that because I've heard people, as we were getting married, be like, "Oh, man, the first year is the best," or, "Oh, the first year is so hard."
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't think either has to be completely true. And just because maybe you go through a hard phase, maybe not even in your marriage, but your own just personal lives, and like you're kind of happy, that doesn't mean that the kind of happy is the best it will ever be. I think we should always have this goal of like our marriage is getting better and better and more enjoyable and more at peace and more right, rather than like, the good old days,
I like that.
Yeah.
I don't want to yuck your yum.
Oh, this was a very little thought into it. So,
but I think
yuck
he's
it all you want.
Well, I think he's right in the sense of happiness, long-term happiness. I think he's wrong in the sense of emotions. The depth of emotion will grow. That's cool, and I think that plays in the long-term happiness. But the honeymoon phase is probably the craziest, most heightened version of those emotions you'll experience. You'll have it for the longest amount of time.
Right.
You'll have little blips of those highs and really low lows sometimes. But there's nothing like that honeymoon phase because your emotions are just so out of control. But when it comes to long-term enjoyment of the other person, 100% agree.
Right.
100%.
Guess it would be what your definition of what honeymoon phase is.
Yeah.
Is honeymoon phase like we just enjoy each other and life is good?
I think honeymoon.
It's like, I'm out of my mind in love with you. Nothing else matters.
Well, I think honeymoon phase is the emotions taking you over to the exclusion of all pain around you.
Yeah.
It's like, my job sucks, but I'm in love, and nothing else matters. That's the honeymoon phase to me.
Yeah.
So it does matter how you define it. How would you define it?
I mean, I think like colloquially, what you described is probably what people think of with the honeymoon phase, where like everything is just nothing else matters. But I feel like, I don't know. I've heard from so many people that like their honeymoon like sucked because they were like, wow, I just got married to this person. I don't even really know them that well. Now I'm going to live with them forever. You know what I mean? Wow. I had friends who were like, had this like romanticized idea of like marriage that once you get married, everything in life is good.
Yeah.
And they were like very disappointed. I think they probably have fine marriages, but they were like, oh, everything wasn't just
Good.
yeah, wonderful. So I think that I view it more so like enjoying the person and being, at peace in your relationship and this understanding of each other, this mutual understanding, which
Totally.
I think you don't really get into several years into a relationship.
Yeah. I think you have a way more mature version for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because we have like some good friends that like they met long distance. And so I think they only spent a couple weeks in person together before getting married, got married, went on their honeymoon, and they were like, wow, you're really difficult to be around because they really, know each other, and they have an amazing marriage now.
Oh my gosh, they're amazing.
But I think if people told them like, man, your honeymoon's going to be the best and that first year is amazing, they'd be like, oh no, we don't have much to look forward to.
Yeah.
If this is the best it's going to get.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. It
Yeah.
does depend upon the people as well. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Good. I like where he's going though. I
Yes.
get it. And I like the way that he's trying to push against culture.
Oh, I mean, he
Love
just
it.
wants to be like, takes things a bit more to the extreme than he probably believes, Matt Walsh, just for the sake of making you, wrestle with
Oh,
thoughts.
totally. Yeah.
So, yeah, that's
love
my
it.
thought. Do you have any
great.
recommends?
Yes, I do have a recommend. It is the movie Predator Badlands.
Yes.
Holy crap.
Surprisingly enjoyable.
Oh my gosh. We were told by a YouTube movie review guy that we just happened to see one day that this was going to be a bad movie. And we love the Predator movies for the most part. There's some misses, a couple of them, but we went through them this last year.
Yeah, both the Alien and Predator movies are so fun.
Yeah. And so going into this one, I was like, my expectations were kind of low because of what the guy had said that we watched a review of. And then just to see every story beat be met so well and all the action be so well choreographed, and then at the end feel like the hero won, you know, it just blew me away. And so I might be raising people's expectations a little too much now because mine were so low and they were exceeded, but go watch Predator Badlands. It was really, really good.
Yeah. It was fun. And I would say that probably like 95% of the movie's a green screen.
Yeah.
But you couldn't tell.
It's
like the animation,
oh my
the world building was
gosh.
so fun. They came up with so many different interesting creatures. And like, I don't know, there's this one creature called Bud. And like, he's like I don't know what you would imagine in like evolution, where it's like not quite a fish, not quite a monkey, something
like
in between. And it's such like, I was laughing out loud. It was very humorous and enjoyable. But, and all around, I mean, slightly violent, but anything that's getting killed is like robots. Not humans.
or aliens.
Or aliens.
And so there's literally no human gore in the entire movie.
Yeah. So it's
and
really
super clean, no sexual stuff, no language really.
Yeah. It's so fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Super fun. I love the kind of insult you could use if you were to tell somebody like, hey, you're the missing link between a fish and a monkey. That's so
we
funny.
found it.
It's
found you.
it. Not even
Were
between
your
a monkey and a
ancestors
man.
Neanderthals? Yeah, you didn't even make it to like
Yeah,
Neanderthal.
you didn't make it to monkey, buddy.
You were the missing link.
Between fish and monkey.
So funny.
Okay,
Cool.
well.
Well, this is fun. Yes.
is awesome.
Oh, and update on because we didn't have an episode last week.
Yeah.
Sorry. We were
Sorry,
overwhelmed.
guys.
I started a new job, which is
did.
super exciting.
Yeah.
I got a new job. Just came out of the blue in the last 2 weeks. So now I'm a real career woman.
She's a career woman.
I'm busy.
Tell
But
'em, girl.
we were going to do a March challenge, listener challenge. It's already, a week into March. So we'll probably just punt that to April. And as for our February vegan challenge,
Yeah,
you want to
let's give
share
you a
with
little
the
update.
stuffies how we did?
So we did okay. Now, by our standards, we did terrible.
Yes.
By the entire U.S.'s standards, we did great.
Yes.
So
We had meat 4 times.
we had meat 4 times. We were trying to go hardcore vegan for the entire month, but we had a couple things come up. We had your birthday. We had another celebration, and then we had 2 other times where both of us completely broke down in life. And so we needed a little treat.
3 were
and-
celebrations. Only 1 was a breakdown.
Okay, there we go. 3 were
I
celebrations.
got a new job. You got to eat meat for that. It was my birthday.
Your birthday, it was
and then
Valentine's Day.
Valentine's Day.
Yes. So we figured why not do it correctly and not just tell everybody we halfway did it. So
Yes.
we're going to try again in April. We're telling you guys ahead of time so you can get in on it if you want to.
We were going to try again in March, but then we had some breakdowns.
Yes.
And you ate Taco Bell. Was it Chick-fil-A?
Yes, Chick-fil-A.
And I had a burger.
Which, by the way, Chick-fil-A, girl.
I haven't been there in so long, and their fries are so good.
They're so good. We have till April. We could probably go at some point.
Get some seed oils in this.
And then as for the other challenge, the no-buy challenge, we were trying to do a no-buy challenge for the month of February, and it went relatively well.
Yeah.
We didn't
really buy anything that wasn't necessary other than like we got coffee out a couple times, which you could view, is that necessary or not? It's good for our relationship.
Yes.
But technically we could make it at home.
We call it necessary.
Yeah.
So it went really good. And I would say for anybody who wants to save some money, we actually saved a good amount of money.
Yeah. And we're not big spenders,
big
but if you just
spenders.
decide, even for a week, I'm not going to spend any money that isn't absolutely necessary, like bills and groceries, you'll save a little bit of money.
Yeah,
Guaranteed.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's how it went. And if you guys want to contact us with questions, concerns, topics, corrections, write in at stuffthatwelikePodcast@gmail.com. Please write in some topics. We've got some topics coming up from some listeners like you. And so we love it when people do that.
Yeah.
And look forward to some guests on this next season. We have a couple of people lined up coming in. So something exciting to look forward to.
Yeah. Awesome.
But that's all we got for today.
All right. Well, this has been Stuff That We Like / Enjoy, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.